Okay. Hello everyone. Hello, welcome. Good to see you, and good to see you back. Thank you. And hello to you all in Zoom. This is session 6 of gardening on the wild side.
Make sure you turn your phone off.
Yeah, turn your phone off and little pass up things. So session 6. Welcome to gardening on the wild side. This is all about soil preparation. We're on Gadigal Bidjigal land, so I'd like to pay respects to the Aboriginal owners of the land and pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Got Steve Batley, a landscape architect and permaculture expert, and I'm Julian, the Sustainability Education Officer here. I'm going to leave it at that. Hand straight. Oh, no, please, if you've got your phones on, please turn them off. You on Zoom, we really do like to hear, if you haven't been to one of these before, it is interactive, so we really do like to hear from you. We've got a speaker here so we can hear you. And if you've just come in, obviously there's a lot of birds. It's the good thing and the bad thing about being outside. But we are doing soil prep, so we'll be doing right here where you can see things. If you're here live, make sure you speak really loud so the guys in Zoom can hear you. And it's kind of handy if you say your name first, because we can't necessarily see you. Okay, over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Julian. Hi, welcome back. Good to see you guys. Did anyone check out frogs last week? Yeah, what can you remember from Matt's awesome deconstruction? What are some of the key messages or things that you remember?
Not all frogs need water.
Not all frogs need water?
Escape routes.
Escape routes? What do you mean?
So they need to be able to access the water, but then get back out and somewhere safe so that they don't get predated on, so they feel safe in the pond. So you can have a branch coming in, or you can have like a pipe or like cracks and stuff.
Yep. Thank you.
The layers and the water plants too.
Yeah, so the layers of plants, you mean? Or yeah.
It can be really simple. Like you just put like a bowl and a couple of stones and a log, and that's it. It doesn't have to be very complicated to attract.
Yeah. Anyone on Zoom like to share something to remember?
Francis? Rosie?
Well, I like the idea that you can actually repurpose things, like what he was saying about finding a sink, and that he used that. So I've kind of been looking around the nature strip at what people are throwing out to see if I can sort of find something and just put it there, because I only have a small space. I don't really like to buy new stuff. If there's stuff that can be repurposed, I like that idea, and how he used the tiles of the roof for little crevices as well. I thought that was very handy.
Yeah.
Francis?
Sorry, I agree with everyone else. All the things, the access routes, it's easy, you can oxygenate water simply, and you can find things. It was just a brilliant thing too, but I love everything about Randwick Council, so it was fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Francis. Kip, did you have something?
Yeah, I would say just the things that we learned about the broader landscape there, that there used to be swamps, and the plants in wetlands need to be able to accommodate wet and dry conditions, and also about the soil and the way nutrients move through the soil. They get lost quite quickly in the sandy soil. So I guess we'll hear a bit about that today.
Fantastic. I think that's enough comments, because that's the perfect segue into the next round of today, which is all about soil and preparing soil for your plants. So we'll go through that process in a bit, but I thought maybe we'd start this week, do a little bit upside down, start this week looking at some of our plants. The last few weeks have been a little bit loose around plants and identifying them and their names and all that. So I've got a heap of plants here, so I'm just going to totally overload you, and we'll see how we go. Not sure where Julian's gone, but hopefully you guys on Zoom. I'll build a bit of a few layers of plants on the ground here, so you can see some of these guys in context. Now, I'm pretty sure we've done these. If we haven't, just shout out. If you recognise them, just call out what they are, and we'll have a quick chat about each one, and then we'll move on to the next one. So it's fairly short and sweet. So we'll start with the ground layer. Righto. Yeah, it's very similar to Lemandra, but this one's actually Dianella, and that's this one here. So this guy. So it's one of our spreading grassy type things. What do you remember the critters that particularly like this? Well, lots of things do, but it's habitat-wise. It gets a purple flower. Yeah, the native bees love this. So that will grow as a ground cover. I don't know if we've done this one. Yes. just, so yeah, Myoporum. I think it's parvifolium. It'll be in your notes. Creeping boobiala, and it's a very flat spreading ground cover. So that will kind of grow across the soil surface, and that's called. Yeah, sorry, what's its name again? Yeah, Myoporum. I think it's parvifolium. Maybe we could have a check for me. It gets a white flower. Bees like it. Now this is a trick one because this is a baby, and this is the grown-up.
Wow.
Yeah, Lemandra. So that. Okay, that's a clumping, quite a big clumping, but it's about 1 metre high. Frogs love hiding in it, so Lemandra is really good for frog habitat.
What was the Myoporum? You like that?
Yeah,
Parvifolium. Well, it's a ground cover. It's fairly dense and fairly fast growing, so I'd say, what do you think would like that? Frogs, maybe small birds, if that does flower. Lizards, yeah. So, yeah, lizards and frogs it's really good protection for those little critters. This one, if you can pick this one from this, you win a prize.
Thank you.
Yes. So this one's the Gymea lily. It goes that way, actually.
What?
There's one just there. So that's a fairly small one as well. But the Gymea lily. I think Matt mentioned it last week. They're very slow growing. It takes a long time for them to get established and take off. There's beautiful big flower spike. They get quite big. But what did Matt say they were good for? The frogs. Yeah, they can handle a bit of wet. So that's Gymea lilies. They're kind of groundy.
Is that the swamp lily?
Yes. Otherwise known as. Actually, back to the Gymea lily for a sec. I've got to remember to do the botanical names. Botanical name of Gymea lily. Dorianthus. I think this is Dorianthus excelsa. There's a couple of Dorianthus, but that's the Gymea lily. Look, they're very similar.
Yeah.
This one is the swamp lily, otherwise known as Crinum pedunculatum. There's one just over there.
So they're different,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Crinum and so swamp lilies. I love swamp lilies. They got this beautiful kind of striking form. They're quite good in shade, and as their name would suggest, they can grow in quite wet soil. So swamp lilies.
And they get a flower?
Yeah, they get it's a little bit similar to the Gymea lily. They get a flower spike with this kind of spidery white flowers on it. They're really beautiful, really attractive flower. And the seeds actually grow up on the top of the flower spike, and as they get bigger and heavier, they fall over, and they just start growing on top of the ground next to them. They're quite an interesting thing.
They're good for frogs as well.
Yeah, frogs would love getting into those. Yeah.
And then the flower comes once per year?
Yes, as far as I know. It's yeah. And occasionally they'll get decimated by caterpillars. So these caterpillars come en masse and just eat the whole thing down to like literally, well, virtually nothing. But and then they just grow back again. So it's quite interesting watching that cycle. They actually grow back better than they did before. So don't worry,
The caterpillars spraying them.
they're doing the work. Yeah,
Does that happen to agapanthus as well?
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it does. Probably the same caterpillar. Right?
Yeah, just really thick.
Yeah. So that's that one, swamp lily.
So, Steve, a question: do the Gymea lilies fall over and seed as well?
Good question. I don't know.
We've got them here. I was just wondering whether to just leave them when they finish or throw them out.
Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone? Yeah, not sure. Sorry, I can't help you with that.
No, that's all right.
Yeah. Anyone remember the name of this guy?
Just tendons.
Herbertia scandens. It's a climber that is climbing over our building behind us, and it's also something that will just scramble around on the ground. So it's really tough, really attractive, I think, native plant. It's fairly distinguishable from its flower. It gets these beautiful yellow flowers and this kind of glossy oval shaped leaf. And yeah, I mean, these ones are in pretty much full shade a lot of for half of the year at least, and they go okay. So, Herbertia scandens, another ground cover / climber. Now, I don't know if we did this one. Did we do this one? So this is throwing a new one into the mix.
Is that big tree behind you?
No, that's behind you on your left on the ground.
Yellow button.
Yeah, yellow buttons.
Is that it?
Yeah. So we've got a lot of it here. It's really hardy. You can tell that. So the grey, it's got very grey leaves. Grey leaves are generally a sign that they're hardy. They can because they reflect the sunlight, and it makes them a bit more able to stand the hot sun. So these are really tough. And they flower at this time of the year, and they're really pretty. I reckon the native bees would love these ones.
And what's our Latin name?
I have no idea. No, it's different. That is one. This it starts with a C. CH.
Here it says Bassiscasum alternativa.
Oh, we've got a mistake in our plant list. So if you go to the page,
Page 13.
yellow buttons, I think it's Chrysocephalum something or other.
It still says on the other page.
Oh, really? Okay, so
Oh, and then under there it says
Chrysocephalum, yeah, spiculatum. So this is Chrysis. It's one of the ones. Chrysocephalum something. Apiculatum, right? So that is not what it says in the book. Which the one, but that's a little ground cover. It'll just spread. Really tough, beautiful flowers. Ground cover. The one that I have in my hand now is the I call it brachycomb. I don't know if you guys are good.
Yeah.
Very pretty little flower. But a little bit more delicate than some of the others, but still hardy in its own kind of way.
Looks delicate.
Hey?
It looks delicate.
Yeah, it's really pretty, really fine little clumping plant, and it's got this flat daisy-like flower that a lot of our native bees really like. The bees with the short tongues. Yeah, okay. Brachycomb multifida. Yeah, that's the Latin name. Common name is cut leaf daisy.
Okay.
But we're all into the botanical names here because there's lots of different. So brachycomb. Getting there. I've got too many plants. Does anyone recognise this guy or girl? This one. Yes, appleberry or apple dumpling. So this is a kind of a scrambling ground cover / climber type plant, and it gets a fruit that you can eat, like a dumpling. And its botanical name is, I don't know either. Can someone help me out here? It should be on there. Oh, I think it's accidentally in the tree section.
Lardiaria.
That's right. The Lardiaria.
Can we grow some cuttings?
I haven't tried these from cuttings. When we go to the nursery in 2 weeks, they'll be able to tell us. I think it would. Looking at it, looks like something that would grow from a cutting. It's quite a pretty little jumbled kind of messy thing, and messy is good. So one of our climbers getting there. This one you should know. Remember, I don't know if you remember from last week. Great frog habitat, great wetland habitat.
Knobby bush.
Yeah, knobby clubrush. Used to be, it's now called, was it Phacinia nodosa? Should be in your books there. And we've got them. Phacinia nodosa, knobby clubrush. Knobby clubrush. So it's got these knobby, I guess that's where the knobby comes from. That's the seeds, the flower, or whatever it is. Right. Isoleucus, the same thing. Yeah, they changed it at some stage. I think we must be behind the change. So this is great in a wetland and great along the ground. We've got it all along here in our swale. So it's really tough. You'll self-seed, good habitat. Knobby clubrush. I think in the books it's Phacinia nodosa, and it's otherwise known as Isolepsis nodosa. Just to be extra confusing, I know. So I'll try and do this a few times. We won't go through them all because there's too many, but repetition is really helpful for kind of sticking it, and hopefully I'll remember some of them as well. How are we going? Are we planted out yet? Because I've got about another 10. No, what we might do is we might move on to soil. So I thought I heard someone talking. Actually, I'll do a couple more because I want to show you a couple of different types of plants that are particularly useful for building soil. Does anyone want to have a guess as to which ones they might be? Yeah, wattles. So here's one that we have done. Hopefully you'll remember the botanical name. It's really pretty, beautiful plant. So it's an acacia. Acacia teratifolia. Yes, and that's it. I don't know. So there's one just here. So it's kind of a big shrub. It's meant to grow about 1.5 meters, but this one's probably 3 meters. So go figure. But what do these do? If you're thinking about soil.
They nitrate the soil?
Yes, they fix nitrogen in the soil. Yes, exactly like peas, beans, and you might notice the plants have, this is a seed pod. They've got these gorgeous seed pods hanging down, full of seeds. So that tells you that it's a legume because it's got a pod. And what legumes do is they have a relationship with bacteria, particular type of bacteria in the soil. They take nitrogen out of the soil air and turn it into little nodules of fertilizer. I'll try and find a nodule for you at some stage. But so wattles. Do you remember what? I think in the first week we were talking about how the ecosystem starts from ground zero and kind of builds up. What role do wattles play in that process?
Pioneering.
Yeah, that's right. So pioneer plants. These are often the first plants that come in. They can grow in virtually sand, and they start to grow and they start to improve the soil. So soil improvement technique number 1 is plant pioneer plants, wattles. Okay, there's wattles which are ground cover. Acacias. There you go. So acacia. This one's Acacia teratifolia. I think. All right. This one is another acacia. Yeah. You sure it's longifolia? It could. I have a feeling though that it's another one that's changed its name recently, but I know it as longifolia.
Why did the name change?
Don't know. Scientists, they like
So
to
confusing.
Yeah, so wattles or acacias are really distinctive. They've got, everyone knows wattle flowers. I don't need to explain that to you.
They're really bad for asthma.
They're really bad for asthma. So if you get asthma, maybe this is not your plant of choice. There are other legumes that will perform the same purpose of building soil. I'll try and get some of those for you next week. But yeah, wattles. Interesting thing about wattles. Do you remember that we were having a conversation about some of the leaves? So what can you tell me about this leaf? I'll show you guys.
The veins are parallel.
The veins are parallel. So what does that mean?
They're not really leaves.
Not really leaves. So these are not leaves at all. They're a modified stem. So this stem and the leaf is this tiny little pointy bit on the end. So this stem doesn't have, I don't know if it doesn't have any or doesn't have many holes in it. So leaves have holes in the surface and they open up and let gas out, they let water vapor out, and that's part of how they process. Stems don't have those holes, so they don't lose water. So it's part of their modification for being able to grow in very low water environments. But they still photosynthesize, so it's a stem that photosynthesizes. So that's kind of interesting. So wattles are really good for your soil when you're starting from scratch. So,
Sorry,
yes?
does that mean that we could be able to grow from that leaf? Like if it's like a stem, would it?
Probably not. Yeah, I don't think it. I don't know, but I don't think that would start to grow. You might be able to take it from a cutting. The beauty of wattles is the wattle seed generally germinates really easily. A lot of wattles are actually quite weedy, so probably the best way to grow wattles is just from seed.
I've got wattles in my front yard. I cut down the wattle tree 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's still seed.
They're still going, yeah. They produce copious amounts of seed.
Where is the seeds in the little yellow flower?
No, so the flowers will turn, once they're fertilized by the bees and things, they'll form a pod. So these are, you're welcome to have I can't give you this because of COVID, but you can have break a piece off there, but that's the seed pod.
And that happens also with the yellow.
Yeah, this one gets a slightly different shape, but same thing. After the flowers go, the seed pod forms and then it just distributes.
Can you eat it too?
Yeah, they're edible. A lot of people use it for food. The seeds, yeah, wattle seeds.
Wattle seed cake.
Yeah, they're actually literally wattle seeds. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, really good for improving your soil. So one way you can use wattles to improve your soil is to plant them, and the roots let the plant do its thing. If you remember back in the first week again, we talked about starting the ecosystem, and what is one of the key drivers to putting energy into the soil and starting to build healthy soil? A while ago.
Compost,
Yep.
microbial fungi.
Yes, and even before that happens. Yeah. So sunshine, everything on Earth, all life on Earth, everything comes from the sun. Photosynthesis is the process. So the sun shining on the leaves, photosynthesizing, turning carbon into complex carbon molecules, sugars, and then growing it into a plant. And the plant actually puts about half of that energy, half of those sugars that it makes into the ground to feed what?
Microbial fungi.
Yes. So fungi and bacteria, they actually feed off the plant, and that comes from photosynthesis. So by actually just planting a plant, particularly plants that will tolerate poor soil, you're going a long way to improving the soil. So you don't actually have to do anything other than what nature does naturally what nature does, which is grow a plant. So that's it's really easy.
Enough.
Where did you say it goes with the nitrogen?
So in this case, in the case of wattles, they're super good at building healthy soil. They're pumping their sugars into the ground, and these guys will feed a certain type of bacteria that lives around the roots, and that bacteria gets food from the plant, and it grabs nitrogen out of the soil air. It literally makes little fertile nitrogen pellets that feed the plant. So it's what we call a symbiotic relationship. It's a two-way relationship. So, does it make sense? I'll find sure there's a wattle around here somewhere that we can pull up and I'll show you, hopefully, the nodules. So step one for improving soil. Another thing that you can do so as the plant grows and it gets bigger, and you won't just have wattles, you'll have diversity. So lots of different types of plants growing in this one spot will be putting different nutrients and have different relationships with different fungi. So these guys will be improving the soil. Everything here is improving the soil. What happens as the plants grow? So they grow, the leaves, the stems, they get bigger. They start making mulch. They start dropping bits of stuff onto the ground. So as the plant, a bit breaks off in the wind, or leaves grow and they get old and they die and they drop on the ground. So they're putting a layer of, we call it mulch in the gardening world, or organic matter. And these guys this is what they do. They grow, they die, they're cycling nutrients from the soil into the plant and back into the soil again. So as the plant is dropping all this stuff, what happens to it on the surface? Yeah, how does it decompose?
Worms. Nitrogen and carbon.
Yep, so worms, bacteria, mites, fungi, all that soil life comes up and starts eating this organic matter. So that's the other way that soil is built. It's through this breaking down of organic matter. So these whole world of little critters that we call decomposers that start breaking down this. And what does it turn this stuff into?
Humus.
Yeah, so humus, which is broken down organic matter. So just the plant does this naturally, growth and decay. So it's actually turning those leaves into rich, black, fertile soil that feeds the plant. So it goes around the rest. So you can plant your plants and wait for this mulch layer to happen. And the mulch layer is adding humus, and it makes the soil better over time, more fertile, more able to hold moisture, gives it a thing called structure. And that supports other types of plants, and it gets more and more complex as it goes. Any questions?
I've got a question. Yes, I do. It's Rosie from Zoom. Sorry, I've got my microphone down now. It's Rosie here. The native plants that just don't seem to decompose as quickly as European plants when they sort of fall down, which I don't know, it seems to take like many years rather than just a few months. Is there or is that because maybe I don't have good soil and there's nothing in there that comes out and eats it?
Yeah, really good question. Has anyone experienced that? Or do you have any? Nikki? Yeah, so Nikki did you guys hear that?
No.
No.
Nikki was suggesting it could have something to do with the amount of water that's available, and I think she's onto it.
Is it also something to do with the fact that there's more deciduous plants in Europe? So they drop leaves every year, but they've already taken a bunch of the stuff out of them, so those leaves are kind of already semi-decomposed when they fall, whereas here they tend to be all year round plants.
Yeah, could be. Yeah. Anyone on Zoom got an idea on that?
Indigenous plants are often sort of very stringy and waxy and
That's right.
things.
tough.
Hmm.
Some of them have
Yeah.
bacterial properties too, don't they? You have to
Yep. Yeah. So some of them do have antibacterial properties. So it's probably a combination of all of the above. So certainly the actual plant material takes longer to break down because it's just tougher. It's kind of got to grow in tough conditions, so it's fairly robust, and maybe it's harder for microorganisms to break it down.
What about the habitat? See?
Yeah.
For the habitat, because it's if they break straight down, then it's just good for the fungus. But if it's slowly breaking down, then everything can use it as it's breaking down. All the lizards, birds, everything that lives in it.
Yeah.
Way because of Australia is totally different to Europe in the way the earth is made.
Yeah. I think what I heard there was there's less. Well, potentially it's the diversity that may not be there that slows everything down, and I think you're onto it. So the more diversity you've got, which is a key in everything, probably the quicker it will break down. And I think Nikki's onto something as well. It's got a lot to do with water. So if it's really dry, as we experienced last year, and starting to feel that way again this year, things will slow right down. The microorganisms slow right down, or they'll go down deeper. They can't survive in hot, dry conditions. So with that in mind, one way that you can really speed up the process of feeding your soil organisms and adding humus and making the soil conditions better for your plants is to, rather than waiting for the plants to grow and decay and fall and all that, you just add some dead plant material. So we've got, there's an endless supply almost in urban areas of what we call leaf mulch, so chopped up trees. So this stuff here is it's literally used to be trees and shrubs and things sent through a mulcher, chopped up into fine pieces, and it's a really, really good material to put on top of your soil for native plants. It's got a mixture of leaves and twigs and bark and all sorts of different plants are in there. Hopefully there's lots of diverse plants in there. And what we're doing here is speeding up the mulch layer by about probably 100 years. It's really quick, but it's really effective. So what have I just done for our soil in this little patch just here where I've put 100 millimeters of mulch? Well, how is that now different to here?
insulated.
It's insulated, so the temperature is going to be more or less fluctuating. We're reducing the evaporation, so it keeps moisture in the soil. And what does that do? Yeah, it keeps the conditions better for your bacteria and your fungi, which are going to break it down and turn it into plant food and improve your soil. So that's the secret. If you just distill everything I said in the last 15 minutes into how do you improve soil, get some mulch and put it on the surface. That's it. All right, but there's hopefully you understand the reason behind that. But that's really, with native plant, we're really lucky in living in this country because the plants that are evolved to live here, they're not overly needy in terms of nutrients and compost and, whereas your veggie garden, you really need to you get better results if you really work up the soil with lots of nutrients. Native plants, they just pretty much need some mulch. And if you keep a nice thick layer of mulch all over your garden, just straight on top of what's there, then your plants will love it and they'll grow. I guarantee they'll grow really, really well. So that's it. I don't know how I can string that on into for another 15 minutes, but that's kind of that's really all it is. I've seen, so I've got the newspaper here. Thank you. So has anyone got the context where they'd like to start a native habitat garden like in a lawn or in an area that's got lots of weeds.
Yeah.
And then weed.
Yeah, or onion weed. Can't help you with that. Sorry. You can try this method, but yeah.
We've got an area that's got lots of, it used to have bamboo, and it's all been cut, but it's just really rooty.
Yeah, okay. That's okay. It'll break. Yeah, if you had some.
They look really like tough.
Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? It's like steel. I think the best thing is just add compost and mulch, and it'll break down eventually. Yeah, cover it up. So if you've got an area of grass or lawn or weeds or something, so one option is you can spend time and dig that out, and then just put your mulch on top, which is valid. Another option is to do a thing called sheet mulching, or it's no dig gardening. It's a technique we use in vegetable growing. You can use it for native plants as well. It's just so much quicker and easier, and you're making the most of any of the weeds that are here. So if there's plants, I don't know if you guys can see, there's a couple of weeds just here, or plants that we've decided are weeds. We could pull them out fairly easily. We've got enough person power. The other option is, so these little grassy things here. So even with native plants, it's actually beneficial to leave those in the ground because they're going to break down and turn into humus, into plant food. So one way is just to cover them. So get a whole section of the newspaper, maybe 10, 20 or more sheets thick. Make it nice and wet so it doesn't blow away in the wind, and just lay it down over the top.
How long do you need to leave something like that before it's ready to plant or use?
Yeah, good question. So it depends on your soil. If your soil, if you've got lots of bacteria, fungi and soil organisms and it's nice and moist, it'll break down fairly quickly, like a couple of months maybe. If it's not, it could be there for maybe, I'd say 2 or 3 months on average, just to give you a number. So if it's nice and wet, it'll break down a lot quicker. So then you just do that. The other thing I've got here, and this is totally an unnecessary option, but if you wanted to do this, it's not going to hurt. So I always think in terms of an ecosystem of what's happening in nature and how can you replicate that. So one thing you may not have a lot of when you're starting out is what? Dead animals is probably, you probably don't have a heap of insects and birds and mammals and things, which are part of a healthy ecosystem. And what are they doing in the forest or in the ecosystem generally?
Decomposing.
So that some of them die and they decompose and they're adding nutrients. What other nutrients do they add? Yeah, poo, manure. Okay, so there's a school of thought that says you should never feed your soil if you're planting natives because they don't like lots of nutrients, and that could be right for some. But I think it's not the worst thing in the world to add, if you want to, you don't have to add a little bit of something like blood and bone, because it's got a lot of nitrogen in it. And
so worm castings would be good.
Well, worm castings have lots of nutrients, other nutrients. A little bit, I reckon, is okay. Just a little bit, just to kickstart some of those soil processes. You don't want to put heaps on because it's too much. So less is more with natives, but some is, I reckon, is okay.
So if you swish it around in water and kind of water.
Yeah, just kind of spread it around. Because what you're doing is adding some of those things that might not be there. So just a little, and you do this underneath the newspaper, just a tiny little sprinkle. And that's like a dead possum.
Does it smell to blood and bone?
Yeah, it smells great.
Right?
Anything good in the gardening world seems to stink.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who's a horticulturalist uses old wool carpet.
Yeah.
Because that decomposes as well.
That's great.
As long as it's woolen carpet, not synthetic.
Yep. Yeah, woolen carpet is fine as long as it doesn't have some sort of backing, plastic backing or something.
And he just digs a hole in when he wants to plant something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah, same thing. You could use cardboard. You could use old T-shirts as long as they're cotton. Something that's going to stop. It just smothers the weeds, and eventually, as long as it breaks down, eventually. So don't. Yes.
Stephen, can you put a mulch over the newspaper?
Yeah, so that's the next step. You definitely put mulch over the top.
Okay.
And Kit, did you still have a question?
No.
Okay, sorry.
Somebody else, I think. It was somebody else.
Oh no, I saw you with your hand up.
Oh.
That's okay.
All right, so we've got. Yes.
What happens
I don't think nothing bad will happen. Yeah. So some. The only thing that could happen is you're wasting blood and bone. The other thing that could happen is you'll have every dog in the neighbourhood coming to your garden and trying to eat. The other thing is some native plants don't like lots of nutrients, and it actually kills them. Some native plants love lots of nutrients and they grow really well. So, once you get to know your plants and understand them, then you can do your research into, if I put blood and bone, am I going to kill the plants that I've chosen? So yeah, just be less. You only need a tiny little bit just to give it a bit of nutrient. Because there's a lot of carbon in here, and the nitrogen in the blood and bone helps balance the carbon and helps the soil break it down. So that's the soil under there is going to be really good in a couple of weeks. If we were to sort of peel that newspaper back, it'd be beautiful.
But in sandy soil, there's too much nitrogen, though. Or no? In sandy soil, there's too much nitrogen.
Yeah, it depends on. There's so many different soils. Yeah. So what do we not have here?
Chemicals.
We don't have chemicals. Yeah, don't use chemicals. You don't need chemicals.
You don't have potassium?
Water needs more water.
Yeah, probably give it a drink, give it some water.
Some compost.
Yeah, we don't have compost. We don't necessarily need it for our native plants.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of stuff. It's just really mulch. But what we don't have here is plants growing. So that's your next step, is to get your plants growing, and they'll start that process.
Would you leave it a few weeks though?
Yeah, so if you do the newspaper over an area and you put mulch on it, you need to wait for the weeds. So the idea with the newspaper is it kills the weeds underneath. And how does it kill the weeds underneath? What happens?
Lack of sun.
Yeah,
Suffocation.
They suffocate. They can't photosynthesize, so they end up dying. But that takes a while, and depending on the weed, I'd recommend leave it for at least a month. It could be longer depending on what onion weed. Maybe leave it for about 10 years. No, onion weed. If anyone knows how to get rid of onion weed, please tell us. Anyway,
Kit says she does.
yeah, go Kit. What do you got?
You pick it out by hand until it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and starves.
I've heard though you've got to be careful picking it out because when you pick it out,
You've got to get the seeds,
and
all
then
the seeds underneath.
the bulb
The little
breaks up and
bulbs.
then it creates more.
Yeah, Kit, do you mean digging it out or just picking the leaves off?
Just taking the leaves off.
Yeah.
Take the leaves off.
Okay, so eventually it just stops it from photosynthesizing and it loses energy and dies. So, okay, give that a shot.
Do you have some here?
Oh, I'm sure we do have some. Yeah.
In the garden, we'll just
in
work
the
it out.
garden.
Glyphosate works, but it also kills lots of other things.
Yeah, so we try and avoid using glyphosate, which is Roundup or Zero, because it's actually, they're discovering it's not as harmless as it's been made out to be. Just do your own research. I'm not going to start with that one, but yeah, if you look, onion weed, you could probably grow it out. So if you cover it with big dense shrubs, it just won't photosynthesize as well. So it's not as bad as I'm making out.
But you try black plastic for sure. I know it
For a
kills
short
it.
period of
Yeah,
time,
for a short period, because then you can build up the soil later.
Yeah,
Once you've eliminated it.
yeah. So people do that. You cover it with black plastic. It eventually kills it, and then you take the plastic out, put your mulch. Different techniques, but so you'd leave it. And what I would do before I actually broke into that newspaper to put your plants in, just do a bit of a test dig and see how it's looking underneath. If there's any green at all, quickly cover it over and wait for a bit longer until all the weeds have died. Because as soon as you break that layer of newspaper, the weeds will come through. The other thing you can do is put your plant in first. So clear a little area, put your plant in, and then newspaper around the plant and mulch. So you can plant and then mulch. It's probably a better way if you've got the plants ready to go.
I have a question about mulching, Steve.
Yep.
Sorry, it's Rosie. You know, with some plants, they actually say don't mulch up to the plant. Is that the same with natives or not?
Yeah, so good one. Does anyone recognise this?
Alba.
Yep. On Zoom. I don't know if you can see that.
Ah, yes.
Coria alba. So imagine this is a plant growing in the ground. The trunk or the stem that's out of the ground, it's evolved to be out of the ground. So if you put mulch right up against and around that stem and put mulch up against it, what can happen? Yeah, it can go. It can go rotten because there's a different environment. There's moisture, there's fungi, bacteria, and that can cause the stem to rot.
Okay.
It can die. Okay, so it's a really good idea to have your mulch about, leave airspace between the mulch and the stem. Some plants it doesn't matter, but as a general rule, that's what you're aiming for.
Can I ask a question about mulch? Because the mulch, that's not really publicly available, is it? Like it's available to council, but it's not really available to the public?
Yeah, look, I'll give you a tip. If you ring around tree loppers, look up tree loppers or arborists or tree guys who chop down trees for a living and put them in those big machines, and they have truckfuls of them. If you ring them, I guarantee you'll get 5 cubic meters of mulch for free within the day.
Okay.
So it's a problem for them. They need to get rid of it. So if you ring them, but just ask, and you can't guarantee that they'll be kind to you, but ask for a load of mulch where they've only been chopping down maybe native trees like eucalypts or things like that, because you don't want a load of mulch that has weed seeds in it, or you don't want a load of mulch that's got palm fronds in it, because it's not the end of the world, but it doesn't break down so well. So if you say, I'd really like to help you out and get rid of this problem of yours by taking some of your mulch, but can you please give me the good stuff, and see how they go. If they don't give you good stuff, there's not much you can do. But maybe don't use them
Otherwise,
again.
they are burning the mulch.
No, I don't know what they would otherwise do. Some of it they would sell, I guess, to landscape suppliers.
I've had it, but what I've done is piled it up for a while to let it kind of compost a bit.
Yeah, you can do
before
that.
I put it on the garden.
Yep.
Randwick Council has some free mulch days.
Yeah, okay. Randwick Council has free mulch days. How does that work?
They have
Posted in the website and you just go with your
We're not
card.
doing free mulch days anymore.
Ever? Or just now?
It's probably discontinued. Yeah. It was, yeah,
Sorry.
people enjoyed it, but it was
Yeah. Yeah, so some stage in the past you could get free mulch from the cat, but it's not that. It's just ring around. You'll get it. You'll get something free. But you can always buy it.
Often when you're gardening, like in my garden, I'll get the same leaves over and over again, and so there's not really any variety. But if you're buying mulch from a nursery, then you're kind of having to navigate all this non-organic or environmentally unsound mulch that might be somewhere you don't want to buy it from.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, be careful. Yeah. So choose carefully. Choose good mulch. There's good mulch and not so good mulch. But yeah.
What about cocoa coir?
Coconut fibre.
Chunky.
Yeah, it's all right. What is it? What does coconut fibre not have? Nutrients. Doesn't have much nutrients. It doesn't have much diversity in it. So the beauty of this stuff is it's a mixture of different things that breaks down a lot better and adds lots of nutrients. But it's not the worst. You could put it in. Yeah. But that's the other way to get mulch. Is get some secateurs and grow lots of wattles and just chop them up. Or get yourself a little mulcher and make your own. So you can grow your own mulch. We do that here in the food forest. We grow plants specifically for mulch and for
I'm always using pea mulch.
Yeah, pea mulch.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good for it's fine. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. So you can buy mulch, you can get free mulch in big quantities. You can grow your own mulch, but just mulch.
Once your garden's established,
Yes.
is there, and it's got lots of diversity and layers and things, do you just kind of let it create its own mulch, or do you still have to keep adding later down the line?
Yeah, you would observe. So one thing, part of this whole process that I don't really obviously talk much about except for in the first week is that, as humans, you're just always checking around, seeing what's going on. So you want to have, but to keep your soil healthy, you want to have organic matter on the surface. So whether that's, at least that much, I reckon, to get your soil. So if your garden is just naturally doing that, sweet, you're off the hook. If it's not, maybe you want to bring some in and keep adding it. But yeah, I think it's that. You don't want that. Okay. Let's. Any other questions around that before we wrap up for Zoomers?
Yeah, I've got a question again. Sorry, Steve. You just got me thinking about the secateurs and making your own mulch. We're in a block of with other townhouses, and people put stuff in the green bin. I suppose I could take stuff out of there and chop it up, but what would I need to look out for?
Weeds.
Yeah, probably weeds. Yeah, weed seeds particularly. So if you're finding branches of trees, then that's probably fine. But keep an eye out for if they've got berries or anything else that you think might grow.
Okay, but so long as it's woody.
Woody, leafy. You want that diversity. So leaves are really good. Sticks are really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get the leaves out of the gutter after a storm.
Yeah.
Because all the street leaves all end up in my gutter, and I just get them and mulch them up.
Yeah, gutter leaves are great because they've started breaking down.
Oh wow.
Stuff like leaves, if it's green, do you need to let it dry first before adding it, or can you add it green?
I have always just added it straight on. So sometimes you get your mulch and it's fresh and it's still green. I've never noticed a negative kind of consequence of adding it straight onto the ground.
What about grass clippings?
Grass clippings I would put into compost or put into your chickens first.
And the eucalyptus, because of the oil?
It seems to be okay. It doesn't. Yeah, as long as it's diverse. So if it was just 100% eucalyptus leaves, probably not, because it's not diversity. But this is, if it's woody material and leafy material, it's just okay. So we'll wrap up for you guys Zoomers. If we could, just for the next 5 minutes, we could go one at a time. I think Julian will call out your name. Just share one thing that you remember from today.
We'll go alphabetically by first name. So Carl. Just while waiting, Dominic will be next.
I can make sure not to get any weed seeds if collecting from green waste to compost.
Could you say that again?
Oh,
sorry, it's breaking up.
When taking green waste to compost from green bins, I should make sure we don't have weed seeds there.
That she doesn't have weeds in there.
When you're taking from the green bin to the
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes.
And Dominic. Followed by Francis. Dominic? No, on to you, Francis, followed by Graham.
Bottle is a good to start with because it improves the soil.
Yeah, wattle, otherwise known as acacia.
I don't like that term, but pioneer plant. Yeah, you could call it the occupation. I don't. Anyhow.
That's okay. You can call them something else.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Francis. Graham, followed by Jacqueline.
I don't know how to follow that one. This is all new to me, so you know, there's probably lots of things that I quite didn't understand. I'm not very good at pronouncing funny Latin names, so yeah, I'll
Something that you learned, picked up from today.
so much that I don't know.
Yeah, agree.
So much joy to come.
Thanks, Graham. Jacqueline, followed by Jeane.
That when plants photosynthesize, they're pumping energy and sugars down into the soil.
Cool. Thank you.
That's a good one. Jeane, followed by Catherine.
Oh, hi. Well, I was just interested in the benefits of the yellow buttons and going to plant more of them.
Nice. Thank you.
Catherine, followed by Kit.
Yeah, I didn't know that wattles were nitrogen fixing. I thought that was quite interesting. And mulch is the answer to everything.
Yep. Pretty much.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, it's just the incredible thing about wattle leaves. I didn't know the phyllodes photosynthesize, that they don't lose water. What a clever adaptation.
Pretty cool.
Kim, followed by Rosie.
Yeah, I was actually very happy when you talked about those little nitrate bits in the soil that are literally little things, because I've seen them in soil before and I could never figure out. I thought this is natural soil, but it looks almost plasticky because they're white, aren't they?
Yeah.
To actually say that the plants make that, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, soil's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim, followed by Vita.
I guess for me, a bit the same than Kit, which I was impressed by the leaves of the wattle that are like stems. Yeah, and then that they're easy to grow with the from the seeds. So I guess we'll wait for next year before they flower to collect some. Would they need fire to also?
Some native plants do. I'm not sure which.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of them do need scarifying.
Yeah.
And you can scarify sometimes in the freezer.
Oh, in the freezer? Oh, really cool.
Well, yeah, so it's a whole bunch.
Cool, thanks, Kim.
And Vita. Maybe Dominique, just in case you're back with us.
Yeah, I think you can get native potting. You can still use your mulch.
So, as we do, we'll say goodbye to all of you on Zoom.
Bye. Thank you.
I love the landscape.
Thanks. Come back next week because we're doing the design process.
Next week. Yes, back to designing.
And please, really helpful if you fill in the survey form each week even. Thank you very much. See you, everyone.